Well, I tell you what, I've been talking about this for years, how the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, all of them need to change their playoff format. The NHL, everybody. From top to bottom in professional sports, it needs to change. And this is just one of those very good reasons why it absolutely needs to happen. You know, we just talked about the Carolina Panthers yesterday, right? They fired Frank Reich because they're a 1-10 football team. That's why. You cannot get worse at your job and expect to stay in your position. That's all there is to it. Well, that 1-10 football team has a very distinct chance to potentially still host a playoff game. Andrew, how? Well, it's really simple. They could still potentially win their division. That's how. That's right. If they win out their division, they would host a football playoff game. Which, by the way, last check, nobody in that division has a winning record. Nobody. This is why the NFL playoffs need to change. First of all, it needs to go back from 14 to 12. That's first and foremost. There's only 32 teams in the NFL. We don't need damn near half of the league in the playoffs. And this is exactly why we don't need half of the league in the playoffs. Because if you win your division, you automatically get in. That, to me, in and of itself, is a participation trophy. I don't know where they came up with the grand idea of if you win your division, you must automatically have a winning record, because we have seen teams before get in with a losing record. Now, somebody's going to say, well, a couple of those teams have won a playoff game. They may have won a playoff game, but have they ever even gotten after that one game? They're fraudulent, my man. Fraudulent. They don't belong in the playoffs. Nobody with a losing record belongs in the playoffs in the NFL. Not a single individual. Now, let's say you go to the format of, since they want to keep 14 teams, just 14 teams, the best 14 teams in the NFL. Then division winner should supersede everything else if nobody has a winning record above them. And being that it's the new NFL with the extra game, you are either going to have a losing record or a winning record. There's no finishing 500 anymore. So you're either 8-9 or 9-8. Which one is it? If you can't get to at least 9, to me, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. I don't give a damn if you won your division or not. But if there's nobody else, then division winner should be the tiebreaker. You take the best 14 teams, you seed them out, you give your best 2 football teams the bye week, everybody else goes to play each other there in the wild card, and there you have it. That is a real Super Bowl. AFC versus NFC should be very outdated. You know, it all came with, before the AFL and NFL merged, that's where that idea came from. And then, of course, you know, you separate them out eventually to AFC and NFC. And yeah, I'm sorry, that's what you have all-star things for. That's what you have all-star competitions for. That's what you have a Pro Bowl for, whether it's flag football or not. That is what you have these things for. Those competitions decide which conference has the best athletes, but having the best athletes does not necessarily translate into having the best football team all the time. Sometimes it does, especially if they know how to work together. You put together a super team like what we saw with the 49ers in the 80s and early 90s. Come on. The NFL playoffs need to change. I mean, without it, do we see the NFC have a 13-year run of winning Super Bowls before they get to the Denver Broncos? Do we see the dominance from the New England Patriots? I love John Elway and the Broncos. He played in Super Bowls that he never should have been in the 80s because those football teams were really horrendous. Carried him on his back. But does John Elway go to 3 Super Bowls in the 80s? It's not a bad idea to have the 2 best teams playing each other. I mean, can you imagine, you know, Frisco versus New York? You know, these NFC title games that we saw for so many years, wouldn't that be better suited as a Super Bowl? than just a playoff game. Look, the fact of the matter is the NFL has changed its dynamic in a lot of ways and it's in the ways that all everybody wants to talk about is the officiating. The NFL has stayed in itself, but changed the dynamic in so many negative ways to me that it's not even funny. These are the things that need to be looked at. We need to be looking at the preseason. Why is it only 3 games? We need to be looking at the regular season. Why is it 17 games? We need to be looking at the playoffs. Why are we allowing football teams in just because they simply won their division? If you don't have a winning record, winning your division doesn't suggest that you are actually a good football team. It suggests that you're the best of the worst. That's all it should mean. Well, if you're the best of the worst in the NFL, I mean, the margin is just so much thinner for competition. Stop that. If the margin was so much thinner for competition in the NFL, then we would never see blowouts in the Super Bowl. We would never see it. I mean, come on, man. Didn't the Tampa Bay Buccaneers completely obliterate the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl? You want to know why? Because Tom Brady was far and away still much better than Patrick Mahomes. And I know Kansas City Chiefs fan, well, he didn't have an offensive line, and he was playing hurt in that game. Well, the week before that, nobody said that. He was just fine, good to go. He's a tough player. No, you got raw dogged by Brady, bro. That's all there is to it. It's a whether you like it or not situation. The fact of the matter is, the margin is not always thin as you think it is. And there were better games in the NFC playoffs that season. Can you imagine Green Bay and Tampa Bay that year as your Super Bowl, especially the way that game played out? Are you kidding me? That would have been way more memorable.